Okay, fab.
Lovely. Right. Go for it.
Right. Okay. Well, welcome everyone. Lovely to see so many people here already. I know that more people will join as the evening wears on, depending on where in the UK you're joining. You may be struggling with weather or just getting home from work. So it's lovely to see as many people as there are here today. My name's Artie Das. I'm a consultant psychiatrist and I'm the specialist advisor to the Royal College of Psychiatrists on foundation training. I'll be chairing this evening's webinar, and I'll also be joined by Amy Legister and Laura McKinney, two a past and present Foundation Fellow. My thanks also go to Patricia, Claire and Georgia from the Royal College, who are supporting us in the background running this webinar. So without further ado, I'm going to get started with my presentation. Right. Okay. Now, right, stream. Okay, let me just expand this a little bit. And there we go. Can everyone see that all right? Can you give me the, yep, fantastic. So today's webinar is about the Psychiatry Foundation Fellowship 2023, and we're going to be covering a few things in the next hour. There have been some changes to the structure, application process and the offer of the Psychiatry Foundation Fellowship. Some of you may know about the changes already, but I'm going to spend a few minutes covering what's changed, what's different, but what stays the same. After that, we're going to be hearing from Amy. Amy is currently a core trainee, but was a foundation fellow from 2020 to 2022. And then Laura is going to talk to us about the current PFF experience and what it's like to be a foundation fellow. We've also got enough time at the end, about 20-25 minutes for a live Q&A. As the talks progress, you'll be able to put, if you can just put your questions into the Q&A box, not into the chat box. You can obviously use the chat box to chat to each other, put any comments in. If you want to ask questions, if I can ask you to put them into the Q&A box, because then we can pick them up between us as speakers, and also Claire, George and Patricia can answer any questions, straightforward queries as the talks progress. If you see any questions that you were going to ask as well, if you like that question in the Q&A box, that will then put it up the order priority list to be answered. So if a question gets 5 or 6 likes, we'll make sure that we answer that. Any unanswered questions that we might need to go and check, we will try and get back to you as soon as we can, and we'll be publishing all the Q&A afterwards on the Royal College website, as well as a recording of this. If you've missed it, or if you have to leave, or you've arrived late, a recording of this will be available on the college website from tomorrow as well. Okay, so I'll get started with a few things about the structure of the fellowship. So many of you may have already heard about the Psychiatry Foundation Fellowship. It's been running actually for quite a few years now. Pre-2019, it was run by the Royal College, funded by the Royal College, and it was available UK-wide. So as well as in England, it was also available in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. The current fellowship, or the fellowship that's just coming to its end now, was initially launched in 2019, and it followed the Health Education England Foundation Review, and it was funded by Health Education England. So although it was recruited through the UK Foundation programme, the fellowship was only available to English foundation schools, English deaneries. It was run jointly with the Royal College of Psychiatrists, but it was recruited through the UK FBO and through Oriel. So final year medical students, as you're all in the middle of now, applied through national recruitment through Oriel, And the timeline for that was very much through Oriel's and the UKFPO timeline. So towards the end of December, and then applications and offers were made available sort of January, March, April. Now that's changed, so that although this is still health education funded, we have, in response to feedback from trainees and foundation school directors, we have now made the offer back to all the devolved nations. So there is HE funding, but the Royal College has funded further foundation fellowships in Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland. The application process, it used to be through interviews, it's now an application form only. And this application form is available on the Royal College website. So hopefully you all know about that, because you should all hopefully be student associate members of the Royal College. So if you go on the Royal College website, navigate to the foundation page, you'll find the application form and also other details around the application on there. So the initial fellowship, which ran from 2019 to 2022, was part of, as I said, an HE funded initiative to improve recruitment in psychiatry, 40 fellowships across England, including mentors, attendance at Ballant groups, funded attendance at conferences, and also paid for subscriptions to Royal College journals and e-learning. Now, as I said, there have been changes. Why have there been changes? Well, in response to feedback from the fellows who've been through the programme, in response to feedback from trainers, mentors, foundation schools, and also other educators across the country, analysis of kind of what's happened in terms of recruitment and applications, and also trying to make the offer more equitable across the UK. We're very aware that this has been only on offer within England, and we wanted to make it more available throughout all of the devolved nations. So what's happened? As I said, the recruitment process is no longer with the UKFPO, it's been uncoupled, so it's no longer as confusing going through Oriel. You will have already applied to your foundation, your chosen foundation programs, and you should find out in the next few weeks whether you've been offered a foundation post. Now, we're aware there has been an oversubscription for foundation programs across the UK, so not everyone will be offered a foundation program in the next few weeks. Some people might need to wait until June or July, but the UKFPO are confident that all UK graduates should receive an offer for a foundation post within the UK. Once people know what foundation program they will be applying to and what's been offered and what they've accepted, they will then be able to provide that information for us. So one of the issues that we'd had is that when people in the old system, when people didn't get a foundation post or a foundation fellowship in their program of choice, they rejected that offer and chose chose another geographical area. We're hoping that if people are aware of what program they've been offered and accepted that, they will then feel more confident in applying for and accepting the offer of a fellowship. So these posts or these application forms will open after FY programme allocation. So I'll come to the dates in a little bit. Recruitment's now in April. So that's a really important point. Recruitment used to be in December through to January. It's now in April. So you've not missed the deadline. Recruitment will be open in April. It'll be open for a few weeks, and then we will be assessing and scoring the applications in May. The next big thing that's changed is the development part of it. And I put development and mentoring. Mentoring, we've decided to change to development days rather than mentoring and Ballant groups, because some of the feedback that we had from the current fellows and previous fellows was that it was really difficult for them to take time out of their acute posts to attend educational supervision, mentoring, conferences and balance groups. It took quite a substantial chunk out of their acute posts in surgery, medicine and non-psychiatry posts, and that was the feedback from foundation schools and also trainers as well. So instead of lots and lots of little smaller chunks of time out in development, we've condensed these into 3 development days, which are spaced throughout the academic year, 1 in each of the 4-month rotations, so no one post misses out, and there shouldn't be an issue in being able to access these opportunities. And it's also an opportunity for you all to meet, network, meet each other. It'll be face-to-face and remote, so that people get to meet each other, but also they're also not travelling too far as well for each of the 3 development days. The access to the CPD fund remains, so you'll have access to up to a maximum of £1,500 of CPD to choose in developing your sort of professional development, as well as the attendance at the International Congress, access to journals, CPD online and trainees online as well. So many of the opportunities remain unchanged. It's the 3 development days that have been added in. The mentoring, we're very aware that this is a real pull for people. We're going to be offering coaching, access to a research network, and also career support and advice to try and still offer the same menu of opportunities that mentors offered as well. So here are some important dates that you need to be aware of. As I said, recruitment's changed, so it's no longer in sort of December to January. It's the UK FPO initial programme matches will come out on April the 13th, and the application window will be from April the 13th to May the 4th. As I mentioned earlier, there is an oversubscription for the foundation programme, which we're aware of, and UK FPOs let us know about. So not everyone will know their specific rotation. Everyone will know about their foundation school. So applicants will be asked to provide details on their application form of either their trust, health board or HCST, if they know about it, so that we can then stratify the application forms, because there will be a maximum of, there's 2 foundation fellows per health board or per deanery, up to a maximum of 3, again to try and spread it equally throughout the UK and make it equitable and as fair as we can for everyone. The application window will open from April 13th until May the 4th, after which we'll be scoring all the application forms, and the fellows will be appointed in June, ready to start in August. Okay, so I'll leave that on if anyone wants to take a photo of it. I'm now going to hand over to Amy, who is a core trainee, but I remember her from being a foundation fellow, and she's very kindly agreed to come and talk to us about her experiences as a foundation fellow. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Amy. Thanks very much, Amy.
Okay, hello everyone. Hopefully tech is working and you can all hear me. Yes, my name's Amy and I'm currently a CT1, so a core trainee, and I'm currently in South London and Maudsley. So I've got some slides that I'm going to share just to kind of give you an overview of my experience. Share. Okay, hopefully you can see that.
We can.
Okay, great. Okay. So yeah, my experience of Psychiatry Foundation Fellowship. So yes, I was a fellow from 2019, so August 2019 until 2021. So basically just a quick overview in terms of when I applied. So as Dr. Das was explaining, I applied before it was a part of like your foundation allocations, and before it was like involved with HE. So I applied directly to the college. So I had to submit an application form. And basically on there, I just tried to write about why I wanted to be a foundation fellow, you know, kind of what I was hoping to get out of it, and a little bit about me, basically. And I was very fortunate enough to get an interview, which I was very excited about. And in my interview, I was a bit nervous. What are they going to ask me about? And then essentially, I just tried to, you know, be prepared to describe in a bit more detail, like, you know, why do I want the fellowship? You know, what can I do with it? What experiences can I do having used it? And I just tried to be prepared to answer those questions. And, you know, I tried to make it, you know, a bit individualized, and basically just was myself, because, you know, there might be lots of people who have done lots of research, or who appear very interesting, or have lots of really amazing inspirations, but I just tried to, you know, be myself and try and express genuinely what I wanted to do. So that's kind of leading into like my advice a bit later, but I'll come back to that. So during the fellowship, the main things that I wanted to use were the amazing opportunity to be able to use some funding from the college. Oops. Oh, okay. The room I'm in, the lights have all turned off, but hopefully you can still see me. But if not, it's fine. You can mainly see the slides. So I was really hoping to use like the opportunity for some funding to go for some courses of things that I'm really interested in. So for example, I went to a conference about mental health services in Afro-Caribbean diaspora. I went to this sort of webinar about celebrating Black psychiatrists, and I was also able to go to a conference about medical education, because one of the things that I'm really interested in and quite passionate about is education and increasing awareness. So I was so lucky to be able to, you know, apply to go for those courses, which, you know, I might not have been able to do if I wasn't a fellow, basically, and didn't have that funding. Another thing that I was able to do, I think it is still part of the fellowship, and I'm sure Dr. Das will clarify, but I was able to go to the International Congress. So the year that I went was in 2021, because I'm sure now 2019/2020 is a year stuck in everyone's minds, because the first year of my fellowship was kind of struck by COVID. So I had lots of, you know, plans and things I wanted to do, but unfortunately kind of COVID took over. And unfortunately in that year, International Congress was cancelled. However, I was able to go to the virtual Congress in 2021, and that was amazing. That was like a fantastic opportunity. The webinars, the courses were so interesting. And that was one of my favorite things during the fellowship, to be honest. One of the other things, as I said, I'm really into teaching and kind of medical education, increasing awareness about medicine, but also psychiatry. So I thought, how can I do this? So I ended up doing some kind of widening participation events, a little bit of teaching, and basically I started an Instagram page where I was trying to increase awareness about mental health and psychiatry and stigma. And I thought, you know, I've got the confidence of being a psychiatry fellow. I really want to take something away from this time. So yes, I started an Instagram. So they're the main things that I did during my fellowship. And yeah, it ended when I finished my foundation year 2, of course. So since the fellowship, what have I been up to? So I took an F3 year, and so in August of 2021, I actually ended up taking a job working as a clinical teaching fellow, and it was at a psychiatric hospital, actually. So there I was, I worked as kind of an SHO on one of the psychiatric wards, so I had some clinical experience, but I was also really heavily involved in teaching medical students who came to that hospital for their placement. And I loved that job. It was really fantastic. And I think, to be honest, being able to reflect on kind of like the benefits I got from the fellowship, and obviously having that really helped, I think, with my application and with my interview, and I could take some of those skills and confidence that I gained from the fellowship into that job. So that was really fab, and I really enjoyed it. That was great. And then during my F3 year, I wanted to start core training. I always knew I wanted to be a psychiatrist, basically, and I always did want to go into psychiatry training. So yeah, I started my core training just in August last year, August 2022. So as I said, yeah, I'm a CT1 and I work at South London Maudsley. And I'm really enjoying it. And yeah, there's so many experiences and things that I was able to do during the fellowship that I think even helped me today. You know, I still really enjoy teaching. I still really like answering questions and trying to be, you know, quite open about how you can, you know, express your interest, get involved with things to do with psychiatry and learn a bit more about it. So that's me now, basically. So kind of in conclusion of what I've just spoken about, the Foundation Fellowship role was, yeah, like so amazing for me, basically. The things that I took away from it, that I benefited from the most, I think are still part of the fellowship now. So, you know, as I said, the funding from the college and being able to do that CPD, to go to conferences and courses so that, you know, I can add this to my portfolio and reflect on things and just really kind of widen my knowledge within psychiatry. I loved doing that. And the International Congress was just amazing. I'm trying to find ways that I can go again, to be honest, because yeah, it's great. It's really learned so much during then. And I do think that it helped with my confidence, because, you know, I was able to gain a lot from this experience and I was able to talk about these things. So I think it helped me towards getting my clinical teaching fellow job, and, you know, potentially helped me. Unfortunately, when I applied for core training, it was just the MSRA, which is an exam that you have to take, basically, and there wasn't an interview or portfolio station, which I think is a shame. However, you know, it motivated me to want to apply to psychiatry and to get going with my training. So my advice to you essentially would be, you know, just maybe after today and have a look at all the resources, reflect on why it is, you know, that you want to apply, basically, and what you would get out of it, and make it quite personalized to you. Have a real think about, you know, the opportunities that would be available during the fellowship, and then yeah, think about how it could help you in the future as well. And then just basically be yourself and be honest, because the only person that can be you is you. And obviously apply. I'd encourage everyone to apply. I was a bit anxious applying, actually, because I thought, am I going to get it? Lots of people have loads of research and loads of experience already. But I applied anyway, and, you know, obviously I got it. So just apply, because you never know. And as I think I've said a few times, and as I would reinforce, is to just be yourself, essentially. So I think there's going to be a Q&A at the end anyway, so I can address any questions there, or if people want to type it in the chat, I'm happy to answer. And if anyone wants to email me about any questions, to do with anything, then there's my email address, and then my Instagram. You can send me a message on Instagram or have a look at what I talk about is with Dr. Amy, basically. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Amy. That was great. And I would absolutely thank you as well for reinforcing all the bits about being yourself. Although your application process was obviously, as you said, through an application and interview, currently applicants won't have an interview. And I know you're anxious about sort of research and papers and things like that, but actually the application isn't points based or sort of achievements based as it used to be. It's values based. So I would kind of very much emphasize what Amy said, that you don't need to have, you know, if you do have an interest in research and you have published, that's fantastic. However, you don't need to have had an interest in research previously. You don't need to have published. It's very much about yourself, your values, what you bring, why you want to be a doctor, why you want to be a psychiatrist, and what drives you. So thank you, Amy, for covering that in your talk. It was fantastic. And you're staying with us for questions as well, because I can see from the Q&A, there's some things that I'd like to get you involved in with the questions, if that's okay, please.
I'll be hovering. Thank you.
Lovely. So Laura, can I invite Laura to join us? Laura's a current foundation fellow who went through the sort of, I think you went through the application form process, didn't you, Laura? And Laura's working in Manchester at the moment, am I right?
Yes.
So she's going to tell us a little bit about working as foundation fellow and her experiences so far. Thanks very much, Laura.
Thank you. Hi everyone, my name's Laura. As I said, I'm one of the current psych fellows. I'm based at North Manchester General Hospital. I haven't done a PowerPoint presentation. I've just got some notes to one side to talk about kind of the things that I think I'd have liked to have known when I was applying, and also the kind of things that I think I've really gotten out of the fellowship. So I graduated from Birmingham University. And the first thing I'll talk about is the application process. So I think my process is similar to what you guys will be going through. So it was looking at how you can showcase the values that our psych are interested in. And so I think I had to answer similar questions to what you do. There was a 250 word limit for each question. So you have to be quite succinct and make sure that your point was coming across quite easily. So the thing I'd say about the application process was that, as Artie said, they're not looking for people who have had oodles and oodles of experience in psychiatry, because everyone knows that getting experience like that can be quite difficult, especially with COVID. And I know that I struggled a little bit to get psych experience. So it was nice to kind of show off my passion about psychiatry without necessarily having to say I've got a publication in XYZ journal, I've done this intercalation. So I thought that was really nice. So for me, some of the things I spoke about were experiences that I'd had, that I'd reflected on to think about how this shows the values that our psych are looking for. And I think the word reflection is really important here, because I think that's the key of what most of the questions are asking you. Look at a situation that you have experienced, how have you reflected on it, and how have you come out the other side knowing that you have the values that our psych are looking for. And I think that fundamentally is what helped me get the psych fellowship. So that was like the application process. Then being a psych fellow, I've got quite a few notes of things that I've really enjoyed on the fellowship. The first thing is what Amy spoke a little bit about, is the funding. So you do have a little bit of money to go towards improving your psych experiences, attending things you might not necessarily have been able to attend without the funding behind you. So some of the things I've done is that I've attended a psychiatry conference. So I went to the CAMS faculty conference in September, and I used the funding towards that to be able to go and experience a conference, because as a medical student, I didn't necessarily have the funds to always go to these conferences. So it's really nice to know that when I look on the events page on our site, I can scroll through and I can know I can go to any of these, and the only thing stopping me is making sure I have the time off, or that I get a study day for it. So that's really good. I've also looked at courses. So I'm currently applying to do a psychopharmacology course on intellectual disability, because that's the area of psychiatry I'm most interested in. And the way I found these kind of courses is through Google. I asked my educational supervisor, which every foundation doctor gets. They're a little bit like a mentor, and they pointed me in the right direction, as well as the mentor that I have. So even though you guys don't have mentors, the educational supervisors are fantastic, and they'll help you in terms of boosting your career. So they pointed me towards courses. I know that people have also used it for educational purposes, such as looking at doing a certificate of education or mini courses. So the fact that there's funding behind you means that you can kind of have a think about not just conferences, but also courses. So one of the things that I'm looking to do in F2 is that I really want to do a short course on understanding therapy techniques in people with intellectual disabilities, and specifically looking at how diagnoses are managed, such as ADHD and autism. These are also found on the next bit of the PFF that I want to talk about that I found really helpful, which is the CBD part of the website. There's so many courses and podcasts available. So on the way to work, I normally listen to a podcast. I find it really interesting, and it also counts towards CBD, which is really useful for future applications for core trainee. So that's really, I think that's really helpful. I also get a monthly journal once a month, and I find that really nice. It's similar to the BMA journal, but it's obviously tailored more towards our psych. So I'm keeping up to date on the our psych goss. I know who's coming and going. I like looking at the recruitment pages because it kind of gives me an indication of what jobs are out there, perhaps what jobs I might be interested in the future, and then obviously also keep up to date with the latest research. I like that it's monthly because the BMA one is fortnightly, and I find that a bit too much and overwhelming. I've not finished the journal by the time the next one comes out, so I like that. You also get subscriptions to other journals online, which is quite handy when you're looking again for like courses or getting inspiration on what to spend your funding on. I've yet to attend, but another thing I'm really looking forward to as part of the PFF is going to International Congress. It's in Liverpool this year, and it'll be the first time I get to meet all of the other psych fellows, and I'm really looking forward to that because again they are a fountain of knowledge. We've got a WhatsApp chat, and I regularly whack on the chat asking questions about kind of what have you guys spent your funding on, anybody got any kind of inspiration for me, or any networking that people have. It's really helpful. And another thing that, again, this will be for next year really, that I'm really looking forward to accessing is the learning opportunities for your future exams that you'll have to do to apply for core trainee. This isn't, I think this is a pretty good kind of add-on to the PFF because even I'm not focusing on an F1 because I think it's a bit too early, but in F2, just to get your head around stuff, to understand what's expected of you, even if you're not planning on doing the exam for a few years' time, I think that's really great. So I was lucky enough to have a psychiatry placement. I did it in my first rotation. So I've done one rotation and I'm just about to finish my second rotation. I know that some of you guys might not get psych placements, and I wanted to address that because I was a bit worried that I had my first psych placement in my first rotation and I was not going to see any psychiatry for the rest of the 2 years, and I was like, oh my god, like what am I going to do? All I'll say to that is I'd say on a daily basis I come across either psychiatry patients, or I come across people who are suffering from medical health conditions that are causing a negative effect on their mental health. I've been able to utilize a lot of skills that I've learned because of the PFF to help me with my job on a day-to-day basis, and I'm going to be moving into acute medicine, and I know that I'll be experiencing a lot of psychiatry in that. So the opportunity for psych exposure is still there even if you don't have a psychiatry placement. So don't be too concerned that you have to have a psych placement because it will be you'll have experiences across the hospital. One thing that is quite good that all foundation doctors get, but you'll be able to use your funding on, is taster days. So all junior doctors are entitled to taster days. You can do 5 days. It might have changed for next year, but that's what I can do. And it means that you get to, again, if you've not had a psych exposure, you can try out those kind of different psych specialties that you didn't get exposure to. So I've done a day in liaison psych, and I'm applying to do a day in intellectual disability. So that's really nice. You do get self-development days as a junior doctor, and what I've done on those self-development days is I've used them to work on the PFF. So that's when I've done the courses that I want to do with the CBD. I've looked at applying for things, and I've been listening to podcasts and reading journals and stuff. So don't think that you'll have to come home from a busy shift and in your evening you have to work on the PFF, because that's not true. There's plenty of study days that you get that you can use the PFF on. So it doesn't feel like it's an add-on to your job that you have to work at. It just folds in naturally into your normal foundation job. I've also found the title of being a psych fellow has really helped me in accessing resources. So I notified my foundation director when I was going to North Manchester to say, hi, I'm the Psychiatry Foundation Fellow in North Manchester. I'm really interested in X, Y, and Z. Please help me with any exposure, or is there anything that I'm entitled to? And you'll be surprised at what they came back with me. So they mentioned Ballant groups, which I know has been changed to development days. And if I'm honest, I think that's much better, because I've been to one Ballant group in the last 8 months, because it's so difficult to kind of pop off the ward for an hour. So hearing that that's kind of how it's going to go down, I think that's much better. But I have been able to attend core psych training and teaching when I've wanted to. And as a psych fellow, you will be able to go to those. So you just need to let your foundation director know, because there might be some things that they'll be able to jiggle for you. So that was really good. At the moment, I'm still really interested in psychiatry. I'm particularly interested in rehabilitation medicine, intellectual disability, psychotherapy, and CAMS. I am really excited to see what F2 brings me, because I'll have more opportunities to take study days and do focus more on things like longer courses, so perhaps like a 3-day course rather than an afternoon course, and things like that. My plan for the future is to do an F3 year, probably abroad. It's most likely to be in ED or psychiatry, and I really want to apply for core psychiatry training. So I hope that's where the future leads me. But yeah, if anybody has any questions, then I'm more than happy to answer them. I know that was a whistle-stop tour of what this a current psych fellow is experiencing, but I hope that helped.
Thank you so much, Laura. That was fascinating. I didn't want you to talk because I was really interested in what you've been doing, and it's lovely to hear how much you've made of it so far. It's also really kind of encouraging for me to hear that you felt that the application form worked well. There's a few questions. Amy, do you want to put your camera on? Because I was hoping that you and Laura would join me with a question and answer. I'm going to whip through a few of the questions really quickly, because they're just sort of procedural stuff, but there's a few that I think you two have already touched on in your talks. So Rob Mortel was saying about the PFF running in the same manner next year. It'll be running in the same manner for the next 3 years at least. That's how long we've got funding for from HEE, during which time will be evaluated and reviewed. But it will be running like this, with this broad structure and application process for the next 3 years at least. There's 2 spots available. I think somebody's asked about how many spots there are per deanery. So there's 2, a minimum of 2 per deanery, or in Scotland and Wales, obviously they're health boards. So 2 per deanery, and then up to a maximum of 3, because that's still not quite, I think there's 29, 30 across the UK. So there's a few sort of extra that can be allocated at our discretion across the UK as well. One of the things that people have wanted to know, Amy, that you touched on about, does being part of a PFF increase chances of getting a training job in psychiatry afterwards? As you said, it's through the MSRA now. It's kind of fully, so there is no sort of portfolio station, there's no interview, it's just on your MSRA scores. For those students who don't know, Amy, do you want to just tell them really quickly about what the MSRA is, your experience of it?
The MSRA not MRSA.
I know, I always get that mixed up.
I think it stands for multi-specialty recruitment assessment. I think that's right. And basically it's an exam that you have to take if you're applying to various specialties. So you have to take it if you're applying for psychiatry for core training. You have to take it if you're applying to GP, pediatrics. I think now core surgical training, they have to do it now. Radiology. So the thing about this exam is it's quite broad. So it's, I mean, having done it at the time I did it last year, obviously I just graduated from medical school about a year ago, and a lot of the content is medical school content and a bit of that refresher. So it's just about, yeah, trying to study from that. Lots of people use question banks and things like that. But yeah, unfortunately, as Dr. Das said, there's no portfolio and there's no interview. So you've just got to try and, yeah, do well in that SRA. Yeah.
But what I would say is the breadth of what you both have described, both of you, and what Laura's described really well in the sort of broadening your learning opportunities, opening your eyes. It may not kind of bump you up the register in terms of sort of core training applications, but what it does do is if you want to apply for F3 or F4 year, or abroad, or for a teaching fellow post, or for kind of research or anything in addition to core training, it will certainly improve your chances of that. It also improves your chances of knowing what's out there. If you do want to do other things and different things before or after core training, and when you get to higher training, at the moment, higher training does still include a sort of portfolio bit and an interview bit. So it may not make much of a difference right now, but it does improve, I guess, the breadth of your sort of learning and kind of career opportunities, and certainly will have an impact when you decide to go into higher training, if that's what you want to do. And the other thing I would say, kind of, Laura, you mentioned about the sort of study fund and using it for kind of things that you're interested in, which again will add to, I guess, the ideas that you might get about your career. And I was specifically thinking about you could use it to actually, as well as the learning towards your exams, you can use it to pay for exams as well, because actually you have to pay a quite hefty fee to apply for MRC Psych. As with all Royal College exams, it's not just MRC Psych. So it's, if you did want to do that, you will be eligible to do that in your F2 year. You can use that study fund to pay for your MRC Psych sort of part 1 or paper A, or whichever way around you want to do it. So the other thing that I thought Laura, there's a question about sort of the application form. You talked about the word limit, didn't you, Laura? I think you said about a word limit. And somebody said, are those on the website the only questions on the form? Yes, those are the only questions on the form. Let's have a look. So how will the application forms be scored? So that's, I score them, and also other sort of senior consultants, educators, trainers who are involved in the in foundation training score them. All I can say is it's not necessarily about achievements. Laura, you described it really beautifully when you talked about reflection and thought, and it doesn't have to be. Somebody mentioned, one of the questions was they've only gotten into sort of interest in psychiatry recently, so you don't need to have had 10 years of doing psychiatry based kind of placements and projects and things like that. I know that people don't come to psychiatry until their final year, or when they've done a few years of medicine, and that's okay too. It's more about things around sort of values, around compassion, leadership, and I don't know, Laura, if you wanted to talk a little bit about kind of any examples you wanted to give. What I wanted people to do is maybe think, you talked about reflection, about any patient scenarios they might have been involved in that made them think, and it doesn't have to be in psychiatry. Many people gave examples of patients they'd seen in surgery, palliative care, in GP, that just made them reflect on that experience. Laura, I don't know if you wanted to give an experience from your application form, because you talked about it really beautifully.
Yeah, one of the questions I answered, which was about being innovative, was completely not related to psychiatry. I spoke about when I was a healthcare assistant during COVID, and I was working on a ward where a patient, they had cerebral palsy, and their vagal nerve stimulator had stopped working, so they'd become non-verbal, but everyone had treated them as if they couldn't communicate whatsoever. And I was asked to prep the patient before surgery, and I noticed that he was being very expressive with his eyes, and I asked him if he could blink, if he could hear me, and he blinked. And I was like, right, this man can hear me, he can understand me, then he can communicate with me, and that means he has capacity to make a decision. So I created like a little form with an alphabet, and with his toe he was able to point and say yes, no, etc. So the surgeons came in, they whizzed through a ward round, was like, this man can't speak, he's basically, he's non-verbal, he doesn't know what's going on. They walked off, and I said, excuse me, this man can communicate, and you need to consent him properly. So that wasn't related to psychiatry. It wasn't related to me kind of seeking out opportunities. It wasn't related to me doing years of working in psychiatry. It was just an experience I had that I reflected on. And I thought, actually, I did a really good job there. And I gave somebody back his right to have a conversation before he had surgery. So I used that for being innovative, because I made a little alphabet kind of document. So yeah, that's one of the examples of, you know, all you have to do is just reflect on a scenario, and if you think that you've got the skills that our psych are looking for, then use that as your example.
Thanks so much, Laura. And I think it's a wonderful example, not just of innovation, but also courage. That's one of the other Royal College values, kind of being brave. As a healthcare assistant, it can't have been easy to stand up to the surgeons and say, call them back and ask them to review their decision. So yeah, a wonderful example. I'm sure all of you will have examples. It doesn't have to be in medicine. It can be from sort of clubs or societies you're involved in outside of medicine. It can be, you know, if you've had previous careers. It doesn't have to be just within mental health. It doesn't have to be just about medicine. As both Amy and Laura talked about, mental health is everywhere. You know, it's everywhere in life, isn't it? It's not just at work. So, you know, think a bit more broadly about where you might get your examples and your answers from. Laura, there's also another question. Hold on a second. At Laura, how did you find your first F1 rotation, being psychiatry and then being exposed to physical medicine in your rotation when others have already had sort of experiences? Amy, if you want to answer that as well after Laura, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, I was a little bit worried about that, because I thought, oh, everyone's going to be able, you know, people are going to have done crash course, they're going to have had so much exposure to medicine, and I'll forgotten it all in psych. Firstly, I didn't, because I was the one of the medics of the team. So, you know, psych patients have a lot of physical health comorbidities. So I was dealing a lot during my day with physical health conditions. So I may not have done skills like acidic taps or things like that, but I was keeping up to date with medicine. And then my second rotation, the second you do an on-call, everything comes back and you are more than capable. It will take you, it took me about a week to get my kind of feet up to kind of doing on-calls and reviewing acutely ill patients and being able to send them off for an x-ray and they come back on the same day and things like that. But I thought I'd struggle, but I didn't. And speaking to everyone who's done psych first and then moving on to the more medical side of things, no one's had any difficulty. Also, saying that you have just come from psych is essentially a get out of jail free card, and people are really understanding that you might not know the computer system, you won't know where things are, and you might have, for example, I didn't do any cannulas or catheters on my psych placement, so people are really kind of helpful, so there was no problem.
Thanks, Laura. Amy, I'm sure you can answer to that as well, can't you?
Yeah. So I actually had a similar experience as well. I basically it was in my medical job in my F1 was when COVID kind of kicked off essentially. So we didn't rotate. So lots of people ended up staying in the same job for a really long time. And one of my F1 colleagues was in psychiatry, and he ended up being in psychiatry for about 6 months, basically, or like 4 months. So because I was a foundation fellow, my training program director basically asked if I would mind swapping with him. So he went to medicine and I went to psychiatry. It was a liaison psychiatry job. So basically I ended up finishing my foundation year 1 on liaison psychiatry. And my first job in foundation year 2 was inpatient psychiatry. So by the time it was time for my second job of foundation year 2, that was in geriatrics, basically back in medicine. And I was terrified because at this point I'd been in psychiatry for literally 6 months plus. So I was really, really worried. I was starting on nights, so that was great. It couldn't really have been worse, to be honest. But I got through it. And I think, you know, you will get through it. It was rough, I'm not going to lie. But things, as you know, Laura said, things come back really quickly, to be honest. And I said to people, I've been in psychiatry for a while, I might be a bit rusty. I just, you know, preface, as Laura said so rightly, you get a little bit of a get out of jail free card. And if that happens, then it's fine. It's not a negative because everything comes, you know, comes back to you when you're on call and when you're on the job, and you'll get through it.
Thanks, Amy. And yeah, I think both of you have the advantages of much younger brains than me, much younger brains than me. But what I would say is, as somebody who kind of has moved around quite a lot as a consultant psychiatrist and moved into eating disorders as a consultant psychiatrist and had to kind of relearn, revisit a lot of physical health, it does come back really much quicker than you would expect, even for old brains, which most of you won't have. So just a few sort of procedural things. People want to know how many applicants there are. So the number of applicants has varied from about 400 to between 200 and 400 from year to year. And will being accepted guarantee that you'll get psychiatry rotation during foundation years? No, so that's changed. As I said, your foundation, by the time you apply, you will have got your foundation offer from the UK FPO and you'll have hopefully accepted it. So this is after you've already accepted what you'll get as your foundation rotation. So about 50% of rotations throughout the UK include psychiatry, so 50% don't. That doesn't mean that you won't get offered a Psychiatry Foundation Fellow, but you won't necessarily get a psychiatry post as part of that rotation. Another question, just can the PFF help with finding or starting research projects? Amy first and then Laura.
I think it could, to be honest. I personally didn't do a research project during my time. However, I think it's the opportunities that being a foundation fellow opens to you. So for example, let's say you know, you used some funding to go to a course, you might be able to network with some people there and speak to someone who is doing research in a topic that you're really interested in. So yeah, I personally didn't, but I think that the opportunities would be there, maybe not directly, but definitely using kind of, oh, I'm a foundation fellow and I'm quite keen. I'm sure that will be, you know, there will be people who will be able to help.
Thanks, Amy. Laura.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing. I haven't personally taken part in any like proper research projects. I've done audits in psychiatry, so I've done one audit on my psychiatry placement, and then I've already got plans to start an audit on AMU, but it's specifically psych-based. So there's opportunities like that. But as Amy said, I think that if you networked and express an interest in research projects, people will lap you up because they're always looking for support in helping complete research projects.
Thanks, Laura. So yeah, I think the opportunities are there. I'm hoping that with the development days we can gather together, as well as the Foundation Fellows, but also key people in research, medical education, leadership at the development days for you to meet face to face and develop those links and those networks across the country as well as locally as well. So rather than being kind of allocated a mentor who may have their own interests and you've got your own interests, it's an opportunity to be a bit more flexible and have a kind of a wider network at the development days and sort of maintain those links. There's also been some really good work being done through sort of academic research networks and the foundation network that we're hoping to sort of work together much more closely on. Now, I'm aware that we're running out of time. It's only a few more minutes to go. I'm just going to have a quick look through the question Q&A. I know there's quite a few that I haven't answered. So Claire and Patricia, who are from the careers department, are working their way through some of these. If not all your, if your question hasn't been answered this evening, my apologies. We will try and get back to you and get answers for some of them around sort of the priority programs. And also working less than full time. The final question, if we do the fellowship and then decide on a different medical specialty like GP, is that okay? Yes, of course, that's okay. We're not going to track you down and demand our money back. Obviously, we'd love it if you chose to come into psychiatry, but actually we need as many psychologically minded surgeons, physicians, GPs. You know, we need more people to be interested in mental health and the role that it plays within other specialities. So actually, no, it doesn't matter. We're not going to ask for our money back. So if you're interested in this, I would absolutely encourage you to do it. And then if you take this learning and these opportunities away to an entirely different speciality, I think that speciality will be richer for it and you'll be a better doctor for it. So yeah, I don't have any problems with that at all. So I'm going to, 6:59. So without further ado, I'm going to say thank you so much to Laura and Amy. It's great hearing how well you're doing, both of you, and hearing from you again, Amy. It's lovely to see you again and hear about everything that you've been doing. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to prepare for this and this evening. Thank you to everyone who's attended. As I said, the recording of this will be available on the Royal College website, and all the Q&A answers will be published as well. And then finally, thank you so much to Georgia, Claire and Patricia, who've put in a lot of hard work into sort of all the arrangements, all the planning, getting everyone together, and then all the hard work afterwards in replying to everything. So thank you so much, everyone. Have a good evening, and I hope that this has inspired you to apply for the Psychiatry Foundation Fellowship. Thank you.
And good luck, because Deanery Day is tomorrow, so good luck, everyone.
Thanks.